What's up, everyone? It is a beautiful springtime March day here in the Midwest, and I am joined by a very good friend of mine who is coming back to the Inside the Hoosier Mind podcast of Yol the Big Dog. He is back. He had a little bit of vacation, did some work, took some unwarranted R&R that I don't think he was expecting, but he had to take it nonetheless, whether he wanted to or not. But he is back with us tonight. Big Dog, welcome back, good sir. How you feeling today?
Oh, I am feeling so much better than I was 2 months ago, man. This has been a hell of a ride, but that's in the past. I'm feeling better. I've been following everything, ready to chop it up with you as always, Tony. Always good to be inside the Hoosier Mind, and so much to talk about. We need to get right into it.
I was getting ready to say, so you go from a maybe an unwarranted time off to you come back and your Giants are making some, we'll call it, interesting free agent moves. They're not
Yes.
necessarily bad, but there's a lot of question marks that come with that. So we'll kind of go with the biggest one. Your thoughts on Saquon Barkley going to the rival Philadelphia Eagles? Do you feel like that was the right move, or do you feel like last year they should have flipped the script? They should have paid Saquon and kept Daniel Jones on the franchise tag.
I mean, I definitely agree they should have paid Saquon and kept Jones on the franchise for sure. Because Jones, obviously, we see that contract. They're basically stuck with that contract for at least another year. I think this year, and then I think they can get out of it after this season. I can't remember exactly, but you know what? It's funny when I first saw the signing, and I had a feeling he wasn't going to resign because he wanted the money. The Giants weren't ready to give him the money, and when Saquon is healthy, yes, he's great, but he hasn't really been able to stay healthy all season long. And it's hard to give a guy that kind of money when he can't be on the field for 16, 17 games.
Yeah.
So as much as it hurt me to see him go to the Eagles, I was after I really lamented it and kind of sat with it and analyzed the whole situation. I'm like, you know what? Goodbye, good riddance. He's the Eagles' problem now. And I mean, watch, he'll be healthy. He'll run for 1,700 yards. I mean, that's
Yeah.
usually how it works out, as we all
Yeah.
know. As
Well,
we all know.
well,
But
I have
again, yeah.
well, I was getting ready to say, well, I have to ask for you guys because we've talked about this a lot on the show before, and I know you as a Giants fan, you've had to watch and you've had to experience this for the last 13 years since you guys won your last Super Bowl. The
Mm-hmm.
offensive line has been a problem for over a decade. It's been a patch job. It's been tried to fix through the draft a few times, free agency, and for the most part, it just seems as if nothing really hits and nothing really works out. Do you think that was a major part of it? Because if you think about it, really, Barkley hasn't had a complementary weapon as far as a wide receiver goes since OBJ. The
Right.
tight ends really haven't lived up to potential that they should have been. Sterling Shepard, but oh man, I'm blanking on everybody else. Ross as well.
Right.
So, do you think that was a lot of it? Because I mean, Saquon was having to really overcompensate for the lack of offensive production, which kind of led to him being hurt a lot.
Yeah, no, of course, of course. They didn't give him the offensive line that he needed to become a successful runner. And to go to Philadelphia, obviously that line was built for the run. However, you losing Chase and Kelsey in the middle is a huge loss for Philadelphia. So they got to fill
Yes.
that. They got to fill that hole. But it basically turned DeAndre Swift into a known commodity, and Swift goes and signs a nice deal over in Chicago. So
Hmm.
they had a hole to fill. They knew, okay, we can get Saquon. They offered him, out of all the free agent running backs, he seemed to get the most money. And it seems like, now through free agency, the Giants, they signed 2 offensive linemen,
Hmm.
the guy from Oakland, I don't really know much about, but John Runyon Jr., I mean, his father's, Hall of Famer, so, it's got to be there in the genes somehow.
Hmm.
And to get Singletary like we did, at first I was like, Devin Singletary, but you know what? He's a little smaller. He's definitely got that speed. He can duck in and out. I think they need to redesign this offensive scheme. And it seems
Hmm.
like in general the Giants are just, going for, a lot of smaller pieces, not spending as much money on one piece. I mean, obviously they spend a lot of money on the offensive Burns,
Mhm.
which I'm not sure where I stand with that. At first, I was like, well, they're going to be playing defense a lot because their offense is going to do nothing, so the defense is going to be on the field a lot. So they need more. They need more players. Uh,
Mhm.
so overall, this free agency the last 2 days have been very up and down for Giants fans. You obviously heard what Tiki Barber said, right?
I was actually getting ready to ask you about that next. Where
Yeah,
where
I
do
mean,
you kind of stand? Do you stand with Tiki? Do you kind of stand with Saquon, or do you kind of get both sides?
I get where Tiki's coming from because Tiki was a giant. He's a giant for life.
Yep.
He wore the blue and white for his whole career. When you're a career player and you see players jump ship for bigger contracts and not stay loyal to the team, yeah, you could be hurt. But to come out and say something like that, and especially on New York radio, I mean the back and he's already stepped back from it a little bit. Oh, I was kidding. I was trying to be funny. You can't do that. I mean, you're
Yeah.
dead to me. That's a strong statement.
Yeah.
And Tiki was a great player when he played. He obviously isn't a
Mhm.
Hall of Famer like his brother Rondé, but
Yeah.
a great player nonetheless. But to come out and say that, no, you can't. That's harsh. That's in my opinion, that's harsh.
Well, and I'll say this too to kind of critique Tiki a little bit. Tiki came from a very different Giants organization. The team is
Yes.
still the same, the name is still the same, the uniforms are all the same. The culture, the coaches, the type of players that he played with is entirely the same. Tiki
Well,
almost
that was
always had a
the Coughlin years. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. You had a very disciplined, very well ran team, very good offensive line, a very complimentary, good defense.
Mhm.
And Coughlin liked to play old school smash mouth football of a power
Yeah.
running back. And I do get it. I'm one of those. I'm kind of with you. I see both sides. I see the guy that for Tiki, he was proud to be a Giant. He's still probably proud to be a Giant. He talked
Right.
about he's been retired almost 20 years. He still loves the Giants, and I don't doubt that at all. So for him, he's coming from a place where he ended in a happy time with a good Giants franchise, good career. Saquon's looking at it, it's like, man, I've been here for a while. It's not working. And for Saquon and for even people in the regular world when they have jobs and whatnot, it's kind of hard when you're like, man, I don't really see the bright future ahead. I don't see them personally making moves that are like, yeah, I feel comfortable. I have the job security. I feel good staying here and taking less to remain a Giant. It's like, man, that
Right.
it's hard, especially for and Tiki should know better than anybody. Running
Yeah.
backs don't last long. Football players don't last long in the
No.
NFL. You have to get that bag to keep your investments to be able to support yourself in the
Oh
future.
yeah.
Not saying neither one of them can't go do be successful. Obviously Tiki's been successful with ESPN and whatnot and New York radio, so he's fine post NFL. But again, you got to try to get what you can while you're still physically able
Oh,
to
of
in a
course. Yeah.
very tough and very punishing league.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this league. I mean, what's the career shelf life? I think it's like 3.5, 4 years. They say something like that.
Yeah.
It's no more than five. I know that.
Yeah.
Especially. I mean, and the game has gotten more physical. The game gets faster every year. We see. So yeah, of course, you got to get the bag. And it is a different game now. Players, as we've seen this, especially this free agency. I mean, look how many running backs have changed teams.
Mhm.
And you got guys, even in their late years, Derrick Henry, going to
Mhm.
Baltimore, huge signing, by the way,
Yeah.
huge signing.
Eckler
But
going to the Commanders.
exactly, but not getting long-term deals, 2
Mhm.
years, 3 years, not getting huge money anymore. Running backs aren't, it's not a running back league, it's a quarterback league, it's a wide receiver league, as we know. So the running back, it's not the way it was, even 10 years ago. But you were saying about talking about the smash mouth football. Yeah, Coughlin came from that Bill Parcells, coaching tree. So obviously they did the same way. I don't really think there's a coach now who runs a team the way these old school coaches do. Even Belichick was having problems running an old
Yeah.
school type of coaching towards the end.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that, hardcore discipline, 8 o'clock is late concept, it really works with these kind of players anymore. I'm not saying the players have the power, but
Right.
in general, the way they're just jumping ship, getting the bag, getting their money, going to arch rivals. What's his name? Aaron Jones goes from Green Bay
Green
to
Bay to Minnesota.
Minnesota. That type of thing. I mean, and there are certain, obviously, other teams in divisions is not, but Green Bay, Minnesota's harsh. Giants, Eagles. If you went to I know there was rumor that Saquon might have gone to the Cowboys. If you went to there, same kind of thing. So it's definitely not the discipline that you were talking about, and so these players don't really have a faithfulness to the colors, to the team, to the coaches. They want to go, where they can get the most money. But it's interesting, if you look at some of the guys the Giants signed, they all seem to have a connection to Brian Daboll.
Yep.
They all have a connection through Buffalo or through New England. I was reading up on it before we went on the air tonight, and it's really interesting how he's getting guys that he knows, that he's familiar with, that will buy into his system. So is that faithfulness, or is that a coach being in control? Maybe, but maybe it's good that they, or any coach, is going to get guys that know them, that they're familiar with working in their system. So
yeah, and I was getting ready to say, I've seen just about any and every coach do that, because I mean, you want to bring in guys that are used to your scheme, because you're the biggest and first thing that you have to build as a coach is a foundation. You have to build a culture. So for a lot of these guys, I mean, I get it. You bring in guys, and they're not just bringing anybody off the street. They're bringing in guys that they know are talented, that they know are going to make plays, and can be leaders for them, and can be extra voices that can connect to players in ways that they may not necessarily be able to, because it's been potentially years since they've played the position. And sometimes you do have to have a different approach, because that's kind of the beauty about coaching and teaching. You have to, and even just being a leader in general, you have to adapt the way that you approach, each person kind of differently, and everybody responds to things kind of differently too.
Oh, exactly. I think the most interesting deal, and it's a minor deal to most people, but for Giant fans, and when you messaged me about Drew Lock, I was like, oh, Drew Lock, really? Drew Lock? And because we lost Tyrod Taylor to the Jets.
So same building, just different.
I know, just across the hall, but Tyrod proved to work in this system, when he was healthy, before Tommy Cutlets came in. And I mean, and I look, and I'm glad they signed somebody, because I don't want to see Tommy Cutlets on the field again, please. I don't need that. That's ridiculous. But I mean, but Drew Lock, I was like, oh man, but hey, who knows what's going to come up in the draft? I know we'll talk about that on another episode, and there's so much to talk about this upcoming draft. But in general, if I gave the Giants a grade, that they got a lot of players, a lot of small pieces that could work in a system in general. So it seems a general consensus grades that I was reading online is like around a B minus. So and even giving Burns that huge deal on defense. I don't know what the terms of the deal, as far as how much of it's guaranteed, how much is deferred. I know it was a 5-year deal. But he's pretty young, so that could bode well. And to have him on that D line with the other young Giant defensive players could work to their advantage. They might become one of those defensive teams that wins games 17-14, 2017, that kind of thing. But in general, am I excited about this season? Not really. It's gonna be one of those rebuilding kind of years, which I accept, because I know we got to get through Daniel Jones this year. Now obviously, if we draft a quarterback in the draft, then it's a whole other story. But I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback. I think they're going to draft a wide receiver. But
I was getting ready to ask you, because I believe they hold the number 6 pick right now, right?
Yeah.
Real quick, who would you want them to draft at number 6 if you had the option?
Oh, well, I mean, I love Marvin Harrison Jr., but he's not going to be there. So
right.
I think the receiver out of LSU,
Malik
I think
Neighbors.
he'll probably fall. He'll probably be there at 6. So, and if they're committed to Jones, obviously to get to draft as we know in this league, you draft a quarterback in the first 10 picks, you got to play him. You can't be sitting on the bench and sitting behind Daniel Jones. Obviously, you're not going to learn much from Daniel Jones as we're learning. So, but look, if they make a trade and move up, and I saw one blog today that had them trading with Arizona and moving up to 4 and taking Jaden Daniels out of LSU. I mean, I'm not going to cry over that. That's for sure. I'll take the pick, but if they're committed to Jones at quarterback, then they need to get him weapons on the outside because he needs guys to throw the ball to. Darren Waller still hasn't made a decision whether he's coming back at tight end, so hopefully they can pick up a tight end in the draft. I know there's a couple out there that they could pick up maybe in a later round and type of thing. And it's interesting, talking about later rounds. Maybe I'm getting on a tangent, but I apologize.
Right.
I was reading some of the bios of the guys that the Giants signed I wasn't familiar with. And most of them, are later round picks, third round, fourth round. I mean, one of them like a sixth, I think Runyon's was a 6th round pick,
Yeah.
And it's just proving that this league is made up of a lot of lower draft tier guys that are able to get into the league, prove themselves in the field, and make themselves into pretty decent ball players. So,
well, no, I'll say this too, because when I heard this saying, it probably stuck with me better than anything that I've heard. And obviously, being a Giants fan, you know this better than anybody. You can have all 32 first round picks in a row, and you can make all 32 selections of who you want for your draft. If those picks aren't the right guy, then those picks really don't matter, because it doesn't matter when you're picked or how you're picked. If you're picked and you're able to be that guy, it's a good thing no matter what. Because obviously with Daniel Jones, and I'm pretty sure you agreed when they first drafted him, and I know I did, as like, this dude is a reach. Like I don't think I don't remember hearing or seeing anybody say that, oh yeah, we had him as one of the top 5 quarterbacks on the board, we would have taken him first round. I don't see that or agree with that from anybody.
He was a complete reach. He was Dave Brown 2.0. You remember when they had that kid out of Duke? Yeah, it was Dave Brown 2.0. I'm like, another quarterback out of Duke? Really? Duke?
Yep.
It's
and I'll be honest, I kind of feel the same way right now about JJ McCarthy. I feel like he's going to be that guy that's a reach. I know everybody is trying to tout him up. He's, one of the top 5 quarterbacks. He's a national champion. He's only lost once in his collegiate career.
No.
You want to know my argument to that, to like counter? Look at what happened to Stetson Bennett. He went undefeated for 2 years, back-to-back national champions. He got drafted in the 6th round and got cut by the Rams eventually due to personal issues, but nonetheless, is not even currently on a roster. And Stetson Bennett is significantly better to me than JJ McCarthy.
Oh, but I totally agree with that. Yeah, totally.
But I've even seen some people in mock drafts saying that the Giants would draft JJ, and I'm like, I would hope they wouldn't do that. I don't think they would, but I would hope they wouldn't do that.
I saw him slotted a couple places at Minnesota's, because now Minnesota, they signed Sam Darnold, and they need a quarterback, which we'll get to that whole thing in a minute. But yeah, JJ is this year's Zach Wilson for sure, because he's like turning heads and moving up, and someone's gonna reach for him, But you know what? If he gets in the right system, it could work. It's all about skill set and system, as Brock Purdy has proved to us. Mr. Irrelevant got in the right system with the right coach and he's got the skill set for that system. There you go.
And I'll say this too, and a lot of people would probably consider this a bit of a hot take. To me, I'm a big proprietor of where you get drafted matters, because I'm going to say, if Mahomes didn't get drafted by Kansas City, Mahomes is not the same quarterback that we see to this day.
100%.
That had a huge impact on how successful he's going to be. Now, don't get it twisted. He has turned into a very successful quarterback, and now I think if he was to go anywhere else, he would continue to be great. But he got that great foundation because he sat behind Alex Smith, who had his career revived by Andy Reid. And then he worked with Andy Reid directly. He got to work with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. So he's had a lot of positive and benefits. And I think you're right with JJ. It all depends on where he goes. I've seen the same thing with Bo Nix. I kind of like personally Bo Nix to Denver. I think with Sean Payton that would really work. They have some pretty decent weapons, and I think he's just athletic enough. He could do that. I even heard Michael Penix to Seattle. He'd be close to home. They have a lot of good talent. He'd be young. He could learn from Geno. But again, we'll dive deeper into that as we kind of get closer to the draft.
Yeah. Those are definitely good. I wouldn't say it's a hot take. I think it's a sensible take. I think it's more of an educated take than a hot take for sure.
I try as now a formerly known as a Cowboys fan. Now hopefully people take me a little bit more seriously than I'm not as. not as big of a goober.
Well, do you have a new team now, or are you just going to be the general NFL fan for now?
I think I'm going to be a general NFL fan. It's one of those. It's kind of like getting out of a long-term relationship. You got to be single for a while. You got to kind of find yourself. Like, you don't hate your ex necessarily, but it's like, still some bad spots.
It's not you. It's me, but it's
me.
really you.
Oh, 100%. And the person is Jerry Jones. It's 1000% Jerry Jones. Like Skip Bayless tweeted earlier, all in, comma, my ass.
Oh, wow. I know. Well, they actually did sign somebody today. Did you see? The linebacker was supposed to sign with San Francisco. Kendricks, is that his name?
Was it?
Yeah.
I haven't
saw something come across like right before we started. I didn't get to read it exactly. But yeah, Eric, the linebacker, played for San Diego, was supposed to sign with San Francisco, and I think he's going to sign with Dallas now.
Okay, I'll have to look at that.
It's about time they got in the game. I know, and I heard something that Jerry was saying. Oh, there was a couple players that they were rumored to sign, and he said it was too rich for his blood. It's like, really?
Yeah, really? It is, because, and I'll say this:
are they in that much cap hell right now?
They're only $2 million over the cap, and as it stands right now, too, Dak is costing them. Yeah, so they did sign Eric Kendricks, which is kind of surprising because they did need the linebacker help.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't signed Dak to an extension, which would alleviate / push some of that money, further on down the road with Dak. But right now they're eating a $59 million cap hit with not. But I'm going to say this. It's smart by Jerry Jones, because the way Jerry Jones, I think, is looking at this is, I've already paid you a ton of money, and I'm getting the same exact result as I got from you when I wasn't paying you a lot of money. I paid you the money. At one point, you've had Amari Cooper, you've had Michael Gallup in prime form, you've had CeeDee Lamb, you had Dalton Schultz, you had Zeke at a pretty good time, and you've had a very good offensive line for a majority of your career and pretty decent defenses as well. And I've gotten 2 playoff wins out of you from it. And the same thing with Mike McCarthy. So I think, honestly, while Jerry might want to go all in, and he can't financially afford to do that right now through the cap, I think this is one of those he's going to let it play out with Mike and with Dak. I think they're going to try to, trust the process as far as building through the draft. If it works, cool. If not, well, they can blow it up next year. They can, they can move on from Dak, because this is Dak's last year, so they don't have to worry about Dak's contract in the future. So they can be set up next year if they want to maybe hit free agency a little bit harder. But Dallas tends to not be very free agent spending happy anyway. The last big spending they did in free agency was 2012, when they signed Brandon Carr, a former Kansas City Chief, to a big contract. Other than that, they don't really participate in free agency very often. It's a lot of very small deals and guys that are either, it's kind of a little bit of a career revival or one more year before they're done type of thing.
Right. No, true. Very, very true. It'll be interesting what they do at the running back spot with when they're not a Pollard signed with Tennessee. Like, where do they go? Did they go through the draft? I mean, I don't know who's left free agents wise. They're probably going to draft somebody, I would assume.
I think depending on how I think the second round is probably going to go, I could see them honestly getting Blake Corum out of Michigan.
Yeah. He would work in that system real well.
Yeah. And I think this is one of those two between wide receivers, running backs. This draft is deep enough. They'll be able to get somebody with no problem. Yeah. But let's move on to another kind of interesting free agency signing that we all kind of knew it was going to happen. There's a lot of rumors and whatnot. It's no longer Broncos country. Let's ride. It's Steelers nation. I don't really think let's ride works, but that's what we're going to go with, because until then, he's still Denver Broncos Russ. I actually had somebody in the ASAP chat tell me that supposedly Mike Tomlin came out and said that Kenny Pickett is still going to be the guy, that Russ is going to be the backup. And I'm kind of sitting here and I'm like, well, albeit the Steelers are only paying him a little over $1 million. The Broncos are actually paying him $38 million to not be the quarterback. Sign me up for that job. Y'all can pay me not to be your quarterback as much as you want. I'll whatever you want. Like Coach O said, which door you want me to go out of. You pay me as much money as you want to, and I won't play quarterback for you. I honestly don't see the caliber that Russ used to be, the potential that he still has, and even if he's not the mobile quarterback that he has, the experience, everything that he brings to the table for the Steelers is an immediate offensive upgrade. Now, I'm not going to
Right.
sit here and say they're going to be scary, at least offensively. Now, defensively, they are still monsters because they're
Yes.
making crazy moves, signing Patrick Queen. They still have
Yeah.
TJ Watt. They've restructured Cam Hayward's contract. They have Minka Fitzpatrick in the secondary. They have Joey Porter Jr. in the
Yeah.
secondary. Um, and of course, they short up their linebacker core with Queen, and they still have Holcomb coming off of
Yeah.
injury.
That was a huge sign, by the way, to get him from Baltimore. A huge signing for Pittsburgh.
Yes, your in division rival too. So
Mm-hmm.
to you, how do you feel about Russ to the Steelers? Do you think it puts them in a better position because Russ goes from one really hard division to probably an even more difficult division in the AFC North, who has all quietly rebuilt themselves up to be even more powerhouses than what they were last year?
Right. Well, let's look at that division. Okay, you've got Baltimore. Obviously, Baltimore is coming back pretty fully loaded. Obviously, losing Queen on the defense, but gaining Derrick Henry in the backfield, a
Hmm.
proven reliable running back, giving giving Lamar Jackson a little more respite back there. Knowing that I can give Derrick Henry the ball first and second down. It's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I'm gonna have third and four most of the time. So definitely, Baltimore definitely improved themselves. Cleveland, who knows? Who knows what's going to be with Cleveland? The reason I say that because obviously, Joe Flacco, comeback player of the year, who by the way signed with the Colts today. I don't know if you saw that. He
I
signed with the
did. I
Colts.
saw that
Yeah,
just a few minutes ago.
that was interesting. But Cleveland, where are they going to be? I mean, they have a quarterback who they're committed to all that money to, who can't seem to stay healthy. Who
Hmm.
when healthy plays well. When
Hmm.
healthy is the key word there. So what's
Yeah.
going to go on with that team? Obviously, defensively, Cleveland has great defensive teams. So they'll be up there. Joe Burrow's coming back from an injury. Where's Joe
Yep.
Burrow going to be? I mean, it wasn't like one of those hamstring. It was with his hand. Obviously, he's rehabbed over the summer.
Hmm.
But Cincinnati's taking a couple of hits. T. Higgins wants to be traded, which I know we're going to talk about that later.
Yep.
Joe Mixon is no longer with them.
Yep.
So where's Cincinnati going to be? When I first saw the move with Russ to the Steelers, I was a little surprised, but then I'm gonna say lamented. I marinated on it for a moment, and I said, you know what? I think this will work. I think Russ needs a coach who's not going to put up with any of his BS.
Yes.
And it seemed like Sean Payton never wanted Russ in the first place when he got to town. He just knew
Yeah.
that his system wouldn't work with Russ and all his crap and all that he came with. So for
Hmm.
Russ to kind of get scaled down to to skin and bones again with Pittsburgh, with a coach like a Mike Tomlin, who's a proven winner, proven. We're talking about disciplinarians. He's a proven disciplinarian. He's got
Hmm.
Najee Harris in the backfield. He's got a very reliable running back.
Hmm.
I know he's got Pickens, who's a great receiver, as long as he can get out of his head sometimes. Because Pickens can be a head case, as we've seen. I
Yes.
know they traded Deontay Johnson, but Johnson really hasn't done much for them. And Pittsburgh always drafts really well. Always
Yes, they
drafts
do.
really well. So they will
Hmm.
draft a wide receiver. Russ will have the weapons he needs. And Tomlin's gonna, design this offense around Russ's skill. Kenny Pickett's not starting. I mean, he had Mason Rudolph starting when Kenny Pickett was healthy at the end of the year. I mean,
Hmm.
what does that say to you? And Mason's not even he didn't even get re-signed. He's not on a roster now. So for
He's
people
with
to,
Tennessee, actually. He
oh,
just
he
signed
did
with the
sign.
Titans earlier.
Ooh,
Hmm.
that's an interesting move. Wow. So for Pickett to not play, says something to me. They needed a real veteran leadership in there. They didn't get it with Trubisky. 'Cause Trubisky, was another reach. As we're talking about quarterbacks that got reached for. He was another reach.
Yes.
Russ is going to start for this team. I don't care what the bloggers say. Russ is starting for this team. That ownership wants a headliner, wants someone back there who's going to give them that veteran leadership. A la
Hmm.
Roethlisberger, a la not Brad. No, I don't want to go back to Bradshaw, but other quarterbacks that they've had. Who can give them a veteran leadership. I mean, are they gonna win? go over 500 again? Probably, because that's what Tomlin's MO is. He's never had a losing season, as we know.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting how they have a new offensive coordinator in there. So how they design the offense around Russ and what Russ can do at this point in his career. He isn't as mobile as you said. That is very
Hmm.
true. But he still can see the field. He can still make decent decisions. And I think with this atmosphere and with this knowing that he's going to have the support of the city as long as he plays well, and because we know that Steeler fan base, they're as faithful as anybody in this league. So
Yes.
he comes out there first week of the season, let's just say throws 2 touchdown passes for 260 yards, no interceptions. It's going to be Russ's. It's going to be Russ's team. That's the bottom line. So, I like the move. I think he needs a rejuvenation of his career because I think that stop in Denver was just the first year with
Hackett.
with Hackett was just a joke, because they let him walk all over the place, and then they have the complete opposite with Payton. So he had 2 years of kind of like it's like when Kurt Warner went to the Giants after playing for the Rams. He had those
Yeah.
2 seasons of and then he came back with Arizona and got back to the Super Bowl. I'm not
Yep.
saying Russell get back to the Super Bowl with Pittsburgh, but I think he'll rejuvenate his career there. I definitely do.
I think so. And I honestly think this is a lot like what he had when he was in Seattle. You have a defensive minded coach who he's going to worry about his side of the ball, his specialty, which obviously they've shown in free agency. That's what they're mainly worried about.
Right.
With the offensive side of the ball, now you have Arthur Smith, who's going to be the offensive coordinator, who was just the head coach in Atlanta. That one's a little bit interesting to me because, and as we kind of dive into our next topic about, Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta, there's a lot of question marks with Arthur Smith as far as why didn't you really utilize Pitts to the fullest extent? Why didn't you utilize Drake London to the fullest extent? You
Right.
got Bijan and you kind of used him to his potential, but for the most part, you've had 3 very talented first round guys that on paper are supposed to be the faces of your franchise, and you didn't utilize them. Like Jonnu
Right.
Smith was your number 1 tight end last year, which is
Right.
crazy when you have a guy like Pitts.
Mm-hmm.
For Russ going to the Steelers, I think the opportunity to have what he had in Seattle was very similar. He's got a very good power running back in Najee Harris, like he did with Marshawn. The offensive line is significantly better. He's got a good wide receiver in George Perkins. And like you said, Pittsburgh historically almost always drafts very, very well. They usually do. They're probably one of, if not the best ran organization in the NFL as it stands
Yeah.
today currently. So yeah, I
Mhm.
I don't think that this is Kenny Pickett's team to lose. I think he lost it last year. Now,
Yeah.
I know obviously he got hurt, which didn't help his case either, but he was another one that when you look back at that draft class with Pickett, you also had Malik Willis in that draft as well, and a couple other
Right.
guys that everybody's, they're first round picks. And the only one you could have maybe made an argument for who was a late first round pick was Kenny Pickett, only because he had been at Pitt for a long time. And realistically, he made his name off of one really kind of gray area rule of you didn't really slide, but you did slide, and you were able to, make a big play out of it for a pretty good Pitt team, and you led Pitt to an ACC championship. So
Yeah.
he had the potential. I think the Pittsburgh, fans and whatnot were behind him. And maybe it's one of those he was just in a bad situation because you had Matt Canada as your offensive coordinator. And obviously that was a huge hindrance to him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with Russ coming here, like I said, his leadership, the style that he runs and whatnot, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, he definitely will, and they're gonna protect him because Steelers are even though they've got Pickens on the end, they're still a run first ball club if you really analyze this team,
Mm-hmm.
so they have a decent offensive line for Najee Harris to run through. I definitely think it's going to be a running as I said running first team, and just Russ is gonna be able to do what he does. Yeah, he's 35, but
Mm-hmm.
we're this league has quarterbacks who are older who can succeed in the right system, and Russ needs the discipline again that he got. Pete Carroll didn't put up with any of his crap, and that's
Yeah.
why he succeeded.
Yeah.
Russ got too big for his britches, and Seattle said, "You know what? Go. We'll get
Mm-hmm.
rid of you. See how you do." Look how that turned out. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch him, in Pittsburgh playing in that AFC Central Division and seeing what happens with that.
Yeah.
Go up against Myles Garrett twice a year. Let's see how that goes.
Ooh, it's going to be rough, especially because you can't move like you used to, Russ.
Oh no, that's for sure. And Myles Garrett is a beast.
But let's kind of move on to our next topic, which I think is probably the biggest signing I think so far of free agency, unless something else crazy happens in the meantime. And I want to give a shout out to this individual because he has got to be the smartest businessman in the history of the NFL. Perk Thuggins, Big Kirko, Dirty Kirk goes to Atlanta. 4 years, $180 million, $100 million guaranteed. He gets 90 million of that this year. He gets the next 10 million guaranteed next year, and he's getting an average pay of $45 million a year from the Atlanta Falcons. Like I said, on paper, with really good weapons in Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. The offensive line is tremendously good. The defense is supposed to be stepping up because you've got Jesse Bates in the backfield and whatnot. And he has the advantage of he goes from a really tough kind of up and coming NFC North to an NFC South who Tampa Bay just paid Baker Mayfield $100 million to be their quarterback. Tampa Bay has let go of a lot of their defensive players. Devin White's no longer going to be there. Carlton Davis is no longer going to be there. And then, of course, you've got New Orleans, who just cut Michael Thomas earlier today. So there's a lot of question marks with New Orleans. And then you have the dumpster fire that is the Carolina Panthers currently. And we don't really know what they're doing. They traded Brian Burns. They let Jeremy Chin go. They got Deontay Johnson. But that's really been about the biggest highlight for the Panthers as it currently stands. But they did get some draft capital from the Giants so far.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on Kirk Cousins, who's going to be 35, almost 36, coming off of a torn Achilles, going to Atlanta? Does this get Atlanta back over the hump and at least in playoff contention?
No.
Really? No, huh?
No. It's Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins. You know, we've seen Kirk Cousins over the years, you know, do great against inferior teams. When it comes to prime time, doesn't have a winning record prime time. He's 1-4 in the playoffs. 1-4. This guy has $100 million guaranteed. 1-4 in the playoffs. 35 coming off an ACL. I don't know what the owner of the Atlanta Falcons is smoking. And Home Depot must be doing very, very well right now. Because they gotta be to be able to pay this man this money. You know, look, if you can make that kind of money in any job, God bless you. You know, he's stealing money. $100 million. I saw that on my. Are you effing kidding me, Kirk Cousins? You know, he's not, to me. He's 78-70 in his career. You know, so he's only 8 games over 500. Yes, he's got some stats, but you know, but if you played in the league this long, you know, and have, you know, and your stats have accumulated, you should be, you know, starting to crawl up into possible Hall of Fame stats. He's not there. He's not a Hall of Famer. He's not, you know, he's not even remotely there. You know, if he can stay healthy, you know, this team will make the playoffs. Yes, unlike last year. But it's Kirk Cousins. We all know what happens to Kirk Cousins. I mean, he lost to the Giants in the playoffs 2 years ago when the Giants, you know, were just overachieving, and he lost to them. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous when this came out. You know, he's only been in the playoffs. You know, 1, 2, 3. I mean, four seasons. I mean, it's just. You know, and he got, when he signed with Minnesota, when he initially signed with Minnesota from Washington, he got a fully guaranteed deal. You know, from what I think I read, he's made $237 million in this league. $237 million in this league. Doesn't have a ring, one playoff. I mean, come on. You gotta be kidding me. I mean, you know, but did Atlanta have any other choice? They were talking about trading for Justin Fields. Was Justin Fields a better choice? Who knows? Economically better? Yes, of course. But, you know, we all know what happens. You sign a big player for big money. your ticket prices go up, your vending, everything has to increase to pay this guy,
Mhm.
Prices at Home Depot are going to go up. I gotta go. I gotta buy some light bulbs, man. There's going to be some $10 light bulbs now. I mean, come on.
Thanks, Kirk Cousins.
Exactly. I'm going to Lowe's, not Home Depot.
Right?
Let's get Lowe's sponsoring this show. Come on. Anyway, anyway, the point is that I was just completely blown away by this contract, and people. And I have a colleague who is a huge Falcons fan, and he
Mhm.
calls into XM radio, Mad Dog Radio all the time. They call him. His name is Dr. Falcon. He's a
Okay.
veteran, and a shout out Dr. Falcon. He's a great guy. What he's done for this country is wonderful. But Doc, for you to be, he was all excited. Oh yeah, we're going. I mean, bring it back. I mean, and he's got the right tools on the field. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, but it's Kirk Cousins. It's
I
Kirk Cousins. I can't
I
I can't
I
endorse
say
it.
he's excited because you gotta think about it. This is gonna be the best quarterback he's had since Matt Ryan. Because, I
Right.
mean, Desmond Ritter's not the guy, Marcus Mariota wasn't the guy, Taylor Heineke's not the guy. There's there's a lot that you gotta deal with that. And
Right.
and I'll say this for Kirk too, and it's funny that you kinda bring it up about, he hasn't really had a lot of success and whatnot. When I was stationed in DC, there I only met a handful of, at the time, Redskins fans, very,
Mm.
very small few. And one of them used to work in the Pentagon with me. And I remember I come up, be like, Garrett, what's wrong with your boy, man? What's wrong with Kirk Cousins? He goes, dude, I have a love hate with Kirk. He goes, Kirk will put up all the numbers. He'll do great. He goes, I will watch Kirk on like third down come up and spike the ball when he don't need to and then look confused. He's like, that's my quarterback, unfortunately. He goes, I don't
Right.
understand why. He goes, could be so good if he
Yes.
would just stop making the weird mistakes, and he just can't do it.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, Justin
and
Jefferson in Minnesota, one of probably the best receiver in the league.
and you got another one in Zay Flowers this year,
Exactly.
and TJ Hawkinson and whatnot. So it
Mhm.
it does leave a lot to be desired, and it does make you wonder, you know, he's had a lot of talent everywhere that he goes. With
Yeah.
Washington, you had Deshaun Jackson, you had Pierre
Mhm.
Garcon, you had
Right.
Jordan Reed there for a while. You even had Vernon Davis at one point. Like, you
Right.
had a lot of talent. Even Adrian Peterson,
Mhm.
when he got let go from the Vikings, he went to Washington and kind of
Right.
revived his career a little bit there. So he had a ton of support
Mhm.
there in Washington. Goes to Minnesota, gets a lot of the same thing, and just doesn't make
Yeah.
it work.
Dalvin Cook had a
Um,
couple good years there before he got hurt. Yeah.
yeah. Zach Potato, did we see Joe Flacco? We did. He's the backup for the Colts behind Anthony Richardson. I don't necessarily hate it. The fact that he was able to lead the league in interceptions, though, only playing like 5 games, is kind of incredible. But
Right.
compliments to the Browns defense for being able to carry him throughout doing
Right.
that, though. But I don't know. I don't hate the Kirk move to Atlanta. When I had first heard that, and we were debating on if the Bears were going to trade Justin, who would you rather take, Kirk or Atlanta? A lot of guys argued they take Kirk because Kirk's more proven. He can win games for you. He may not be the
Right.
greatest, but he can. I looked at it as, that's true, but you also have a limited window now,
Yes.
because who knows what type of Kirk you're going to get coming off of this injury, being older. Now, albeit injuries are a lot easier to deal with, the therapies and the process of healing and whatnot is a lot different than what it used to be many years ago when this would first happen, and it would be more kind of a career ender.
Right.
But still, we won't really know until we see it on the field. And again, you've kind of limited yourself, because he might be under contract for 4 years. Doesn't mean he's going to play all 4 years. He could play, 1 year, be terrible. He could retire. They could trade him. They could cut him. There's a whole lot of scenarios. Whereas if you went with the younger option,
Right.
you have a little bit more flexibility and versatility, and you could have a group of guys that can build a chemistry together and work, rather than kind of bringing in an older guy who you don't really know what you're going to get.
And it's interesting you say older guys. So Kirk's 35. Most of the
Hmm.
stars on this offense are probably 10 years younger than him. They're
Yep.
all probably in their early 20s. I don't know exactly know. So
Yeah.
are these young guys going to be like, all right, old man, lead us to the promised land. And then the
Hmm.
minute he falters the minute he makes that stupid interception play on a primetime game. Because Atlanta's going to get some primetime games with Kirk. The minute Monday night comes, it's fourth down at the 12. They're down by 3. They're going. I mean, I'm sorry, third down. They're going for the win. He throws the interception in the end zone. What's Bijan going to do? What's Pitts going to do? What are these guys going to be? Oh, here we go again. It's typical Kirk Cousins, And
Yep.
I'm not wishing bad luck on the guy. I'm just going from what I've seen in his career. And I've watched his whole career, He hasn't proven to me that he can win in the clutch, The whole "you like that" was a long time ago. You like that, Kirk, And he's probably
years ago, Kirk.
He's sitting there right now in the bank, counting. You like that? You like that 100? You like that 200? Like that 300? So,
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it should be them and Tampa fighting for that division, because Tampa's re-signing Baker, re-signing Mike Evans. Yeah, they got some work to do on the defense, but they have a good defensive coach, and I haven't been a big Baker fan, but I'm happy for Baker. I'm glad he finally proved himself, bet on himself, and he won. And he got a decent deal. He didn't get an overpriced deal. He got a decent deal. So, I mean, but $180 million over 4 years. I mean, wow. Where do I sign?
And the bad part is if Atlanta didn't pay it, somebody else probably would have.
Somebody else would have. Who would have paid that, though? Denver? No, Denver wouldn't have paid that.
Denver can't.
They can't. Who would have paid that? Vegas, yeah.
Vegas has the money. The Patriots were real interested in Kirk Cousins.
I did read that.
You never know. I mean, I doubt the potential reunion would be there, but money-wise, Washington could come calling again.
Well, they're not. Well, Washington is going to draft. Obviously they're going to draft a quarterback. So they're in that position. It's interesting you say Oakland. I'm sure Devontae Adams was like, "Oh, please get me someone that could get me the ball."
Yes.
Yes. How do you think he feels out there right now? Oh,
he's got Minshew mania now. He's got the mustache, man. It's gonna be all right, brother. It's gonna be all right.
But and that Raiders defense is good, though. I mean, signing Christian Wilkins now, they got a real good defense. So they do. I mean, that city just had a Stanley Cup, a victory over there, with the Knights. So that Raider team needs to do something, And I mean, obviously they're building defense because look at they got a defensive coach and all that, but I mean, Minshew mania, I don't know. We'll see what they do in the draft. That'll be interesting. I know I'm getting off topic, but it will seem interesting.
Right. Now I know I said we were going to talk about these two teams, but the one I feel honestly is more interesting just because we know the quarterback situation a little bit better in Houston than we do in Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Houston has absolutely blown it out of the water when it comes to their free agency signings, the trades and whatnot that they've made. They were able to get Joe Mixon from Cincinnati. They got Danielle Hunter that they signed. They also they signed somebody from the 49ers, if I remember correctly.
Calvin Ridley, too. No, Calvin went to Tennessee. I'm sorry.
Tennessee,
Tennessee, my bad.
That's okay. I'm trying to look here to see. Azeez Al-Shir they got from Tennessee, who's actually a pretty good pickup for them as well. So they've had very quietly a really good offseason so far. I've really liked what they've been able to do. It will be kind of interesting, and this ties in a little bit to one of our later topics of they have CJ Stroud, they have Tank Dell, who's going to be coming back. Hopefully he's able to, hit last season's form like he was able to this coming year. What would your thoughts be if Houston was also able to potentially what I think they're going to do as far as drafting a wide receiver goes, but if they go to Cincinnati and say, "Hey, we'll take T. Higgins off your hands for you,"
huge,
and him and Tank Dell with C.J. Stroud and with Joe Mixon in the backfield.
If they can trade for T. Higgins, C.J. Stroud should pick him up at the airport because that's the weapon CJ needs. I mean, they had a hell of a first year. CJ proved that he's ready to play in this league. And We're going to probably see Houston in a couple primetime games this year, which I'm looking forward to because when the chances I got to see them, I did enjoy. Obviously, in the playoffs, they were just overmatched against that Baltimore team. I mean, although they hung with them the first half, but Baltimore came out slow like they normally do and then figured it out. But yeah, I mean, if Houston would be a great landing spot for T. Higgins. They've got the quarterback, they've got the O-line. Will Anderson on defense is a beast. I mean, wow, he just came out and played. So that would be interesting to see him land there. Do they have the draft capital to trade for him? I don't know what kind of draft capital Houston has because they're not going to trade a player, but they'll trade picks, I'm sure.
Yeah, I say they got the picks because you have to remember they have 3 first-round picks from Cleveland.
Oh, right.
So they have the extra one. Now they did use one of those in last year's draft to get Stroud and then to get Will Anderson immediately after. But they do still have a first-round pick, I believe, later that is originally Cleveland's. That
T.
they could
Higgins isn't a
potentially
first
use.
round. You don't trade a first rounder for T. Higgins. You trade a second or third. He's not a first rounder.
You don't think so? You don't think he's
I
first
don't
round
think.
talent type of dude?
No, I don't think he's a first round. I mean, if they're willing to trade a first rounder for T. Higgins, they might as well draft one of the better receivers in the league. I'm sorry, one of the better receivers in the draft in the first round against someone who's a couple years younger than T. Higgins, who probably has the same skill set as a T. Higgins. I mean, I wouldn't trade a first rounder for him. A second rounder, yeah, but not a first rounder.
Okay. But no, I do agree though. Because I was debating in somebody in the group chat with who I think had a better year, CJ Stroud being a rookie or Jordan Love, and this actually all stemmed from somebody hating on Will Levis, who I don't necessarily think Will Levis is the guy, or I don't think he's good. But I was defending him on the fact that the Tennessee Titans last year were a mess, and it was hard for him to be able to really have a successful season there in Tennessee with everything that he had going on. Whereas I was like, well, when you want to talk about rookies being successful and whatnot, you've got CJ Stroud, who led his team to 10-7. They won the division. They beat the number 1 defense in the NFL wholeheartedly. Yes. They beat Cleveland very badly. And then, of course, like you said, they hung around with Baltimore for a lot longer and a lot better than we expected. And then, of course, they ended up getting blown out by Baltimore in the second half. But again, CJ Stroud had a fantastic rookie year and probably one of the best that we've seen for a really long time. So like you said, I'm excited to see what Houston's going to be able to do next year, primetime games or not. I think they're going to be good. And I even said it too. I think this entire AFC South division is going to get significantly better too. I think Indianapolis could be significantly better depending on what they do with the draft. I said T. Higgins, that would be another big potential spot that he could go to kind of complement Michael Pittman Jr. They still have Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson's be coming back, and they still have a top defense. Hopefully Jacksonville, I think unfortunately Jacksonville is going to regress a little bit.
Losing Calvin Ridley is huge for them. They need to fill that spot because Trevor needs a weapon on the outside.
Well, let me kind of read to you some of the names that Jacksonville has signed, and to me when I sit here and I look at it, I'm like, they're not bad signings, but they're a lot of very what I would consider like C-level signings. So they signed Gabe Davis from Buffalo for 3 years, $39 million. I
didn't read that. That's an interesting sign. Wow.
They got Devin Duvernay from the Ravens. They signed him to 2 years, $8.5 million. Again, both not bad wide receivers. They're both to me kind of inconsistent, haven't really lived up to the potential that I would have them potentially living up to if I had the choice. Offensive line, they get Ezra Cleveland. They re-signed him, who's apparently with their squad last year. And then defensively, it's mainly been in the secondary and that I've been a little bit more disappointed. They franchise tagged Josh Allen, so they do get to keep him at least for 1 more year, which is a good sign. But secondary-wise, they signed Ronald Darby, who he's been bounced around the league quite a bit. He was with Philly, wasn't exactly great. I would kind of grade that as a C if I had to grade anything. And then safety-wise, they signed Darnell Savage from Green Bay, who, while he had a great he had a great playoff game getting a pick since against Dak, that's really not hard to do if we're going to be 1,000% honest. Anybody can get a pick six on deck, darn near.
Yeah.
But it's one of those. None of those guys do I sit here and say, man, Jacksonville really shored up their secondary. It's like, no, these are guys that they fill in when needed,
Right.
and they can be, comparable fill-ins for a couple games, but not for a 17-game season. I'm not
Right.
seeing that.
No, it's interesting that they kind of went bargain basement a little bit. I don't know what their cap deal was, but they're definitely trying to fill with role players. But on all in this league, you got to have that one guy who's going to intimidate a defense. And Gabe Davis, is good, but he's not a number one. I don't think he's
Right.
one. I mean, Ridley was more of a number one than Gabe Davis was.
Yes.
So, it'll be interesting. I also think it was interesting they traded for Mac Jones as a backup to Trevor.
Yes.
Obviously, Mac Jones needed to get out of New England, but I think after last year, after Trevor getting hurt and having I think their backup was Blaine Gabbert or something like that. I can't. No.
CJ Beathard.
Right. They probably said, okay, we need a better backup. Is Mac Jones a better backup than CJ Beathard? Who knows? I mean, I don't think we've really seen the real Mac Jones because of the way he was just kind of limited and had not a real offensive coach in New England, and plus Belichick messing with his head with the Bailey Zappi thing. So who knows what's going to. I mean, Trevor's not losing his job. Don't get me wrong, but I think having that more reliable backup is at least gives Peterson the confidence of, if my guy goes down, I got someone who can play the game, play the position a little bit better than what I had. So that was an interesting trade when that went down. I think that AFC South. I think it's Houston's to lose because Indianapolis. I mean, Richardson. Came out like a bowling ball. Started knocking him down. Then he gets hurt. But now that they signed Flacco, and I was thinking about that as you were talking about it. I think that's a real interesting signing as Flacco as a backup to Richardson, because now you have a seasoned veteran who's going to say, hey, kid, you want to play in this league, you got to slide, you can't dive, you end up like Robert Griffin III. He needs it's like it's like in Return of the Jedi. You need a teacher. He needs a teacher.
Yes, he does.
He needs Flacco's. Flacco's a teacher, so that's going to be interesting. But that AFC South is definitely got better. Tennessee. Who knows what's going on with that quarterback position? Who's going to play? Is Levis? Is Malik Willis going to play? They got Mason Rudolph. I mean, it's going to be a 3-man battle in camp for this season for sure. And your boy Tony Pollard gets to watch it all.
Yes, he does. He gets to watch all of it unfold. But let's move on to one that it's a rumor. And I think it's kind of an interesting rumor. And of course, me being a big fan of college football and being a big fan of his college football team, the rumors of Justin Jefferson potentially being on the trade table. I don't know the validity to this. I saw a little bit of reports on it that Cincinnati is apparently making all this cap room, clearing all these moves, trading T. Higgins because they want to try to get Justin Jefferson and reunite them LSU Tigers in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson there in Cincinnati.
Wow.
Do you think there's any validity that Justin Jefferson gets traded? Because we've heard Cincinnati would probably be the most attractive and for a fan perspective, probably the most entertaining offense we would ever get to watch. Right. There are supposedly rumors that New England would be interested in trading that number 3 pick to get Justin Jefferson. And add
who's going to throw him the ball in New England?
Jacoby Brissett apparently is who they would be comfortable with rolling with then.
Yeah,
but
Jefferson doesn't want to deal with that. It's funny, and we can go back to what we said before about the first round pick. Maybe this is where a first round pick comes in with T. Higgins, but it goes the other way now. That is for someone of Jefferson's stature who's proven in this league. If you trade Jefferson for Higgins, obviously Cincinnati's got to throw in a first-round draft choice. If they do that, do you make that deal straight up with a pick involved?
For Higgins for Jefferson?
Higgins for Jefferson. Cincinnati's got to give Minnesota probably a first or a second-round pick.
I would say so, because to me, if you're Minnesota, you've already got Zay Flowers. or no, Jordan Addison. My apologies, not Zay Flowers. Jordan Addison. You got Jordan Addison, who proved he had a great rookie year. So you would still have a number one guy.
Played well when Jefferson was out with an injury.
Exactly, and knows the system. You would have then T. Higgins, who, even if you don't think he's a number one, he's a very comparable and very, very good number two. That you could have and you could move on with, as well as the draft capital that you would have to be able to use with him as well. I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing if they were to do that just straight up and another pick. It helps Cincinnati out. Minnesota could have another guy. He could even maybe step up if, Jordan Addison kind of has a sophomore slump or if he's injured. I wouldn't exactly be opposed to it, to be 100% honest with you.
Well, you have two players who are disgruntled in their organizations and one out. So you put them in, you trade them straight up for each other. Obviously, and now we're talking about it, I think Minnesota might have to throw in a lower round pick, just kind of back and forth with Cincinnati if that were to happen. But it would be interesting to see if they made that deal. I think the deal on paper works. I don't know how the numbers work. Obviously, we know it's all about cap room and numbers and all that stuff. But yeah, if Jefferson went to Cincinnati, him and Jamar and Burrow, and I'm trying to. Who did they sign somebody to replace Joe Mixon in the running back? I can't remember who they signed.
Let me look here.
And I know they signed a tight end because they needed a tight end.
So they re-signed Travion Williams. Oh, they signed Zach Moss. Zach Moss was the big one that they signed. Yeah.
And then they signed a tight end too.
They signed, I believe it was Mike Gesicki, if I remember.
Yes, it was Gesicki. Yeah, Gesicki's a good pickup. He played well down here in Miami. He had a crappy year up in New England, but he played well down here in Miami.
Because I saw the jokes, and even he joked about it. Of now he's going to have to, and especially if Justin Jefferson goes there, they're going to have to teach him how to do the gritty correctly. So,
yes, exactly, exactly. That would be fun. Yeah, no, this is a hell of a rumor, man. We need to start this rumor trending on Twitter. That's a good rumor. I like this. I like this trade deal. Let's get this trending on Twitter.
Right. Now, I know we've touched a little bit on it, so we won't go too deep into it. We'll actually hit our last topic of the night, our kind of fun, joking topic, because I think it's funny. Right. Obviously, there is, and I don't really like to get into politics too much, but this isn't really too much diving into what each person believes in or whatnot. But obviously, there was the supposed rumor and the announcement from RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., that if he is to run and if he wins the election, that the man that he would pick and ask to be his vice president would be none other than New York Jets legendary quarterback of Aaron Rodgers. Could we potentially see Aaron Rodgers going to the White House next season? Now, I do have to ask, the cap space for the White House is atrocious. Like it's terrible. Awful.
They're way over. They're way over the
cap. Trillions of dollars. Doesn't matter how many people they cut. Trillions of dollars over the cap. They got no draft capital. They got nothing.
They got nothing. They got nothing.
Like they're going to trade the Jets 3 first-round picks that they don't have. It's not happening.
Exactly. I saw that come through, and I'm like, "Are you really? This is what we need right now." I mean, in an election year that is so tumultuous and so just like we're doing this again. Really, it's one of those years. I don't know if you watch South Park, but
yes,
there's an episode of the Joker. Yeah, basically it's like it's a giant douche and a turd sandwich. That's what the election is always. And that's what it is. Now the interesting thing about Kennedy, he's one of those. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's always been a conspiracy theorist. So him and Aaron Rodgers go neck and neck together. But that Kennedy name does carry some cachet, which is going to be interesting how far he gets into this process and if he actually gets his foot into the final election. So it'll be interesting what he does and who he takes votes from, whether it be from Biden or from Trump. You never know. But we're not here to discuss that. It was interesting, and people were saying, well, the vice president doesn't really do much, so Aaron Rodgers could still play football and still be vice president, So, but did you see some of the other possible choices? I think Jesse the Body Ventura was on that list. Couple other just out of left field. Tony Robbins was on the list, I think.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's just, and it's typical Aaron, just like, well, you know, we'll see what happens, blah blah blah. It's like, you can't do ayahuasca in the White House, bro.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't. So
It
you know, that's all Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson's a big Trump supporter, so that's all he needs is a star quarterback who he's paying money to go run as an independent. You know.
oh man, can you imagine too, like, so I don't know how much of First Things First you watch, but
I've been watching more and more of it lately. Yeah.
Nick Wright put it out there I think he put it out the best. This is kind of like a kid who is like a childhood like movie star, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what I would picture like Daniel Radcliffe was for his parents. Like he's the breadwinner of the family, like raking
Yes.
in just millions of dollars, and he can make the financial decisions for the family because
Mm-hmm.
it's mom and dad, you don't put the clothes on my back. I put the clothes on my back and I
Right.
can go do whatever I want. He said that's kind of what it's like with Aaron Rodgers. Like there's really no adult at this point that can tell
Mm-hmm.
him this is what you need to do. This is what you're going to do, Aaron. No, I can just do what I want. I can go be
He's
vice
not.
president.
That's
Like
why he can't keep a girlfriend. He's never been married. He's always been a loner. He doesn't get along with his parents. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, he's a rebel without a clue.
yeah. It it's crazy, and I saw that too, and I was like, really, this is what you pick, this is what you go with, man, come
Mhm.
on. And like you said, he's an anti-vaxxer. He does all the crazy weird hallucinogenics and whatnot,
Right.
and he supposedly tried to come back from his Achilles being destroyed, from the Jets offensive line being terrible.
I know.
It's one of those, and Nick actually brought this up too, and I wanted your thoughts real quick before we close out. He doesn't think Aaron Rodgers' heart is in football anymore. And it kind of makes sense because if you look at the last few years, he went and hosted Jeopardy. Now, albeit he went
Right.
and hosted Jeopardy in the offseason, but he had joked and talked about becoming permanent host. Now he's joking about becoming the vice president. And who knows, we might be diving too deep into it as far as, if we think Aaron Rodgers' heart is still in football or not.
Right.
But that still does say a lot that you're almost 40 years old. This is now your second franchise. You're supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the top quarterback in the NFL. You're
Mhm.
coming off of an injury and you're spending the offseason not recruiting, not being with your guys, not just kind of going with the flow. Not saying you can't say whatever you want to say. You
Right.
can. You deal with the potential consequences that come with that anyway. But you're saying stuff like, yeah, if he was to ask me to be the vice president, I would consider it. Like if I'm his teammates, I'm like, I look, like the realistic possibility of this happening very, very low.
Yeah.
But you're my quarterback. What do you mean you're going to potentially up and leave if this happens? Like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I'm sure Sauce Gardner's like, dude, really? Really?
Mm,
You know? That's an interesting take by Nick Wright. And I run very hot and cold with Nick Wright. Sometimes I like what he
yeah.
has to say, and sometimes I shake my head. I'm like, how is this guy on television? You know? But
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's just to see him and Chris Broussard go back and forth sometimes. I'm just like, I can watch it, and then sometimes I have to mute it because it gets so just crazy.
Crazy.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, is Aaron Rodgers' heart in football? You know, it's interesting. I think, you know, he's like, okay, I'm 40. I still want to play, but I think he wants to be like beloved the way Tom Brady was beloved in his, you know, golden years of football, you know. But he doesn't have the rings. He doesn't have the personality. He just doesn't have. He's got the national appeal, but in a different way. Like he's
Yeah.
almost the heel. You know, the way the. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen the way the Rock has become a heel in
Yes.
WWE now, which is crazy. But
Which
that's,
which he was always good at being a heel. I
I
mean, that
know,
was always one of the funniest things was whenever he
but
was a
to do
heel.
it now, it's like, oh wow. I mean, it's like with everything that's going on with WWE with Vince McMahon. But I'm getting off topic.
But
Anyway, the point is, no, Aaron Rodgers is definitely like the beloved heel of the NFL. If you ask me, is his
mhm,
heart in the game anymore? I mean, we'll see this season. We'll honestly see, you know, this season. You know, what does he do in training camp? You know, he was all into training camp last year. We watched the Hard Knocks, how he was with it, how he was running with his players, you know, running drills, getting with these guys, you know, coaching up, Zach Wilson. You know, it'll be interesting to see, you know, how he runs it. Now that he's got a more experienced backup in Tyrod Taylor, does that
Mhm.
almost push Aaron Rodgers? Like, this guy can ball. I've seen this guy ball. When this guy gets the opportunity and stays healthy, he can play in this league. He had no intimidation of Zach Wilson ever even remotely taking his job. I'm not saying
Right.
Tyrod Taylor's going to take his job, but at least you have a backup who can go in there and win games.
Mhm.
Zach Wilson was not that guy. So I think if Aaron commits to training camp and whatever and kind of squashes this rumor, then we'll prove his heart's in it. I just think Aaron Rodgers likes to stir it up. If we've seen, he did the whole Joe Rogan thing, he stirred it up. The whole going to the darkness retreat stirs it up. He wants to be in the headlines. He wants to be on the front page of the Post. He just does crazy ass things, to just stir it up. And does he mean most of it? No, but we're talking about it. Where Nick
Yep.
Wright's talking about it, Colin Cowherd's talking about it. They're talking about it on ESPN radio, on XM. They're talking about it all over the place, and that's what Aaron wants us talking about it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too when you mentioned that, Tom Brady was a little bit more beloved in his golden years. You're right, because Tom Brady, because to me Tom Brady spent that entire time as a heel, essentially. Like, if we're going to do it like a WWE term, he spent
Right.
that entire time as a heel. He leaves New England. Now we kind of see the more joking Tom. We see the more fun Tom. He's coming on
Right.
podcasts. He's making, smart aleck comments. He's poking
Right.
fun on Twitter and whatnot, something we never saw him do in New England.
Right.
Whereas Rodgers, and I don't know if you feel the same way, I felt like up until about 5 to 6 years ago, like that 2018 season to me is when you really kind of saw the shift of
Yeah.
he's about 5 years post Super Bowl. He's recognized, he's considered a big name, he's considered one of the best in the game. He's starting to hit his prime and whatnot. And then but he's not really a good guy, but he's not a bad guy.
Right.
He's just neutral. He's neither one. And then you start to see him turn around, and I know we've talked about this, and I've gone on so many rants about how he mismanaged Green Bay's cap space of,
Yes.
I need more help, but I need to take all the money. But I need more
Right.
help, but I need to take all the money. For a guy that supposedly wants to be vice president, if that's how you manage your finances, please, please stay away. We don't
Right.
need that anymore. Please stay.
No.
You don't need all the money.
Right.
Um, and then now it's like, oh yeah, I'm the cool fun guy after, I'm, so bad. Not
No.
not really. You're not. Like Tom Brady can do it because that's all, because most people hated him unless you were a
Right.
Patriots fan. Most people hated him. So his career. Aaron, it's like, yeah, you're kind of trying to be a heel, trying to kind of be a good guy. Like, you're not that guy. Like you said with Rock, it's crazy that he's trying to do it now. But with Rock and Brady, it's one of those, they are so loved, doesn't matter if they're good or bad, people are
Right.
gonna cheer. People are gonna be happy that they're just there. Aaron, I think at this point, between everybody, the fact that we do talk about him so much and the fact that everybody is kind of left here like, dude, what are you like? Make up your mind. What do you
Right.
want to do? And I think a lot of people are just kind of sick of it.
No, no, they are, and I think Aaron, you said 2018, and it's interesting you mentioned that because that's like he was getting to the NFC Championship game every year, couldn't get over the hump, couldn't get over the hump. Obviously, so frustrated that he wasn't winning.
Mhm.
I mean, he loses to Brady in the COVID year. Brady goes on, wins the Super Bowl. Oh, Brady won without Belichick. He's our hero. He's got seven Super Bowl rings. Yeah, he got divorced from Giselle, but he'll be all right. That type of thing. Whereas Aaron's like, okay, I got to do some crazy stuff because obviously I'm not winning anymore in this league. I mean, just
Mhm.
because he's making the playoffs, and then the last year he loses to Detroit, doesn't make the playoffs, and then obviously Detroit has moved on to bigger and better things. And
Yep.
makes the NFC Championship game, which by the way, I mean, if we ever go back to that sometime in the off season, I have thoughts on that too, but that's besides the
Okay.
point. I had to lay vertical on my couch to watch it, but I was watching it like this, but I was able to watch it. um,
Right.
yeah. But the point is that Aaron Rodgers is one of those guys that some journalists love him, they think he can do no wrong, but in general, I've never been a big Aaron Rodgers guy because, to me, you can put up all the stats you want. You got to win in this league. People say, "Oh, Eli Manning's not a Hall of Famer." Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls, beat an undefeated Brady team, beat them again. He led his team from the 6th seed, from the wild card spot to the Super Bowl, winning all the games on the road.
Mm-hmm.
How is he not a Hall of Famer? Yeah, he's got the Manning name and the cachet, but still, how is he not a Hall of Famer? So that argument, yeah, Aaron's a Hall of Famer. He's got the stats, he's got 1 ring, but he's creeping into that stat wise of putting up numbers like the way Favre did towards the end. Yeah, Favre went to 2 Super Bowls, but only had one ring, of course. So it's interesting where he was in 2018, where he is 6 years later. But to circle back to Nick Wright's comment, to comment on that, is he dedicated to football? I think he is, but he just likes to stir the pot, and this is he's not going to stir the pot on the field. He's going to stir it off the field with all this off the field craziness.
Yeah, and I will say real quick to that COVID year with Brady where he lost, this has been my biggest critique against Rodgers. And, I had a lot of, Aaron Rodgers supporters and a lot of Packers fans, give me a lot of blowback on it of, well, this is the team game. This is what happens with the team. This was the coach's decision. If I'm Aaron, it's 4th and 2. You're basically right at the goal line. You threw 3 straight incompletions. To me, yes, you took the field goal to take the points to make it safe, but you're up against pretty much the only other guy in the NFC that's going to give you an absolute run for your money as far as, leaving time on the clock to go down and get the win.
Right.
Why not run for it? Why not at least make the effort and say, you know what, I'm going for it. If I get it, sweet. If I don't, oh well. At least I can say I gave it my all and I tried. He didn't even try. It's like I can't sit here and defend you and say, oh no, he gave it everything that he had. He left it all on the field. No, he didn't.
Right.
Like I get it if you don't want to take the hit, but yeah,
you're absolutely right. One quick thing before we go, I just want to backtrack to the free agent thing for a second. Out of all the free agent signings, I think the biggest signing was Kansas City re-signing Chris Jones, because he obviously proved in the Super Bowl how valuable he is on that defense. And for him to stay in Kansas City, on paper, they should three-peat. They absolutely should, because, they got everyone coming back, and Mahomes has proved, all right, go on the road, fine, I'll win. But he's got a defense now, and hell of a, for him coming back, hell of a signing.
And I gave our buddy Jonathan a little bit of grief about that, because when we talked pre-Super Bowl and I told him, I said, man, Chris Jones is bigger impact than Bosa, than Young. He's like, really? I go, yeah, sure is. And then sure enough, I was like, hey man, hate to rub it in there, but I
watched that post Super Bowl. I watched that post Super Bowl episode. That was a hard watch to watch him, man. He was grieving, bro. I felt bad for him. I was texting him that night. I'm like, dude, he's like, oh, this is gonna take days, and but he came on. I give him credit. He did.
I told him, I was like, man, you're a brave man. You come on taking your lumps. A lot of people wouldn't do that, and I did. I tried to be easy, but it's like, man, we gotta talk about it, because that was your team, and it. I will say it ended up being a better Super Bowl towards the end than it did the beginning. Because I'm not gonna lie, I watched through the first half. I didn't watch hardly any of the third quarter, and then I came back for the fourth because I was like, "This is a really dull Super Bowl." And I even said in the group chat, I was like, "This is the dullest Super Bowl I've ever had to watch since the Rams Patriots one a few years ago." I was like, "This is bad."
Definitely, but it got good and it got great, and then it became a classic, no doubt.
It did.
But it was funny. As soon as Kansas City scores, as soon as they score in overtime, I just turned the TV off. I didn't want to watch the trophy. I didn't want to see Travis Kelce talking or any of that stuff. I'm like, all right, game's over. Boom, I'm done.
Hey, you mean Mr. Swift?
Mr.
Swift. Apparently, Taylor's not going to take his last name. He's taking hers.
Oh, no.
Because I saw all the videos post that. I saw this like Kansas City family. They were cheering that they won, and then the girls are all wearing number 87 Chiefs shirts, but then on the back it says Swift and 87. I was like, I didn't know Travis got married to Taylor, and now he's Mr. Swift. My apologies.
Yeah, we'll see how long this lasts. We'll see.
right? But Big Dog, it is a pleasure as always. It was great having you on. Great having you back. Let everybody know where they can find you, man. As far as wanting to hear more talking on sports, even though I know you are a fellow musician.
Yes.
Where can they find you if they want to engage with you, though, man?
Well, first off, Tony, it's great to be back, man, and I'm so happy to be back talking with you again. Yeah, for a while, it was kind of just couldn't really do anything, but now everything's back to somewhat normal and be able to sit up and talk. So yeah, thank God is good. God has definitely helped me through this, so definitely a good thing. Where everyone can find me, just Google my name, Yoel Hyman. My Instagram will come up. My Facebook, my YouTube is about 200 some odd videos on my YouTube of me performing live with my band, playing solo, all that stuff. And yeah, just the sports talk I do is basically with Tony and throughout the ASAP network that we're involved in. But yeah, go check out my music and drop a comment, give me a like, follow me, let me know what you think.
Awesome, man. And of course, like he said, if you ever want to catch more of him, he'll be on. He'll be on with me a lot more. We'll definitely probably do a pre-draft episode as we get closer to draft night, and we'll definitely do a post-draft night as well,
Yeah,
to kind of see
definitely.
what we think about the team's drafts, what we think happens, because obviously on draft night too, there's crazy stuff that happens.
Oh,
We're gonna see guys go places we never thought. We're gonna see trades happen.
yeah.
But that's the best part. This is what I love about the NFL. This is what I love about college football. The moves, the changes.
Hmm.
Who's gonna end up being where. How is each team, organization, whatnot going to do? So I'm excited. If you want to find out and catch more on that, though, you can find us on Inside the Hoosier Mind on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and anywhere you get your podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google, etc. And of course, you can always find us, or at least me, on the app formerly known as Twitter at IN Hoosier Mind as well. But again, man, appreciate having you on. It was a blast as always. Great
Definitely.
talk with you, and hope everybody enjoy it. And we will see y'all next time, probably here in about a week or so. So everybody have a
Cool.
great night.